Alright, this is episode 4 of Notebook Nuggets, a series where I share a random selection of personal growth type insights that I've came across recently and find worth sharing. So I always assumed that when I came across a stat or study saying that doing X results in a 30% reduction in the chance of death, that I'm 30% less likely to die. But a lot of those studies are using relative risk, not absolute. So relative risk measures the risk compared to another thing, and absolute risk is like the likelihood of that thing actually happening. For example, let's say a 70-year-old person has a 20% risk of dying in the next 10 years. That's their absolute risk. Okay, so let's say eating 100 grams of fibre per day results in a 10% relative reduction in risk. So if that person started eating 100 grams of fibre every day, their risk of dying in the next 10 years would be reduced from 20 to 18, which is a 2% point reduction. So none of these studies are lying, they're just using the better sounding number. So next time you come across a study or stat and you're surprised by the percentage, check if it's relative risk or absolute risk. So I read an article the other day from a guy called Kevin Kelly, and he basically just wrote down for his 73rd birthday 101 pieces of life advice, and out of them I've picked 5 of my favourites, and they are: try to define yourself by what you love and embrace rather than what you hate and refuse. There's a weird profound difference between thinking less of yourself, not useful, and thinking of yourself less, better. Work on your tone. Often ideas are rejected because of the tone of voice they are wrapped up in. You'll never meet a very successful pessimistic person. If you want to be remarkable, get better at being optimistic. So I think everyone likes looking up to successful people to try and emulate their success, but their brains, their upbringings, their specific life choices all played a part, meaning what they've done to achieve success, even if you copy it completely, won't return the same results. Then what do? Well, you could look at your own experiences and try to emulate those. For some random examples, if you're struggling to make friends, how did you make friends in the past? Or if you're struggling with motivation, how have you found motivation in the past? But then some people might say, I've not made friends in 8 years. So what did you do differently 8 years ago? Maybe you were more optimistic or less stress, or you just didn't care what people thought about you. So trying to become like your role models is great, but trying to become the person you used to be could make things easier. So the next insight is about setting yourself yearly themes. So instead of setting yourself New Year's resolutions or goals, you can just give yourself 1 or 2 themes. For example, instead of saying, I want to spend X amount of time with family this year, you could just give yourself the theme of family, or the year of connection, or family comes first, just like a phrase or word. Then, as long as you're making decisions throughout the year that are family orientated, you've achieved that yearly theme. I just feel like shit happens and your interests are going to change, and even though it's only a year, that's still a long time. Who knows what you'll be doing or what you want to be doing 3, 4, 7 months down the line. So setting yourself specific, structured goals can sometimes set you up for failure. So this is definitely something I'm going to consider for next year, but then continue smaller monthly goals. And for the final insight, dopamine. So I know this is talked about a lot, but I liked Dr. K's take on it. So I've changed a bit of what he said. So you wake up with a full battery of dopamine, and if you wake up and snort some meth straight away, you'll be squeezing out pretty much all of your dopamine, and you're not going to have motivation to do anything else, and the only thing you'll have motivation for is to do more meth. Right, but I guess that's not really relatable, so let's take going on your phone. If you wake up and go straight on TikTok for 15 minutes, that's going to squeeze out a good amount of your daily dopamine reserve. In other words, your dopamine signal will be weakened and doing other things like work or homework or whatever will feel less rewarding, and you'll be less likely to reinforce the behaviours associated with that work. So if you can manage to wake up and avoid scrolling on your phone or taking meth, you'll be doing work with a full tank of dopamine. Dopamine gives us pleasure, reinforces the behaviour and creates craving. And you could say that having less dopamine does the opposite to those things. I'd say it's useful to think of using up your dopamine as making things harder for your future self. It's not just 15 minutes on my phone this morning, it's that plus an increased craving to do the same thing tomorrow, less reward from your work today, and more difficulties with motivation today. Alright, so today we spoke about how a lot of studies use relative risk, so a 40% reduction doesn't always mean a 40% reduction. Then we went through some Kevin Kelly advice, talked about how looking to your past self could be useful for growth, and finally we spoke about yearly themes and reducing your dopamine in the morning. Thanks for watching, and